Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Washing Dishes. Today, I think we're going to start doing something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to break down a whole chicken into the breasts, wings, thighs, legs, and then the remaining carcass. And we'll make stock with the carcass today, and then over the next couple of episodes, we'll see what we can do with the other parts. Stick around and enjoy. Before we get to breaking down the chicken, I just want to talk about stock for a moment. It's a beautiful, magical, liquid gold that runs every fine dining restaurant in the world. It's made from scraps and bones, and it is the basis for so much of the magic that comes out of kitchens. Today we're making chicken stock. We're going to use the carcass from our whole chicken, and we're going to add some carrots, onions, and celery, a few black peppercorns, a couple of bay leaves, and a few cloves of garlic, and plain old filtered water, and in a few hours we'll have something absolutely incredible. But first, we've got to break down our chicken. Your standard boiler fryer chicken is probably one of the most popular foods in America, but we get it in little pieces in plastic trays wrapped with shrink wrap. Getting the whole chicken can save you a lot of money at the expense of not a lot of time to do what we in the business call fabricate it. Basically, break it down into its component parts. And it just takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of patience to learn how to do it. So come along, I'll bring you in a little closer, we'll talk anatomy, and then we'll go through the process of taking apart our formerly feathered friend. This is our chicken. When you get them at the store, they're going to have some moisture in them, so you just want to pat them dry inside and out. Sometimes they will come with the giblets, and sometimes they will not. This particular one did, so we're just going to... Look, you can't really be ceremonious about this. We're just going to reach between the rib cage and pull out the giblet. These will go in our stock. They're rich and meaty and delicious, but they have a weird texture and don't always look great. And then we're going to pat it dry inside, just so we don't get any moisture on our cutting board. Whenever you're doing butchery, you want a very sharp knife and a very dry cutting board. So I've got a roll of paper towels and some gloves just off camera, as well as a trash can for the paper towel. Let's talk anatomy first, right? If this were a chicken, it would be like this. But it's dinner, so it's like this. So you've got the breast, the wing tip, the wing flat, and the drumette on both sides, legs, thighs. Everything else is going to be trim or carcass. Let's dive into it. The first thing you want to do is take off any kind of extraneous fat, like this stuff here. And you can take some of the skin with it, that's just fine. And then there's a few ways to do this. You can start with the legs, or you can start with the torso. I like to start with the torso because I think the legs give it a nice stable base. Like many things in cooking, there are lots of correct ways to do it. As long as you're safe and get the job done, that's what's important. So I'm going to, there's joints right here. I'm going to reach under and push the joints in until I feel them pop. And now it lays a little bit flatter. And then we're going to divide the breastbone. So starting right in the middle, you've got, it's called the keel bone that runs right here. And you want to put your knife just to one side of it and slide smoothly down through. Staying along the bone, but trying not to cut into the bone. And then as we go, we can open it up a little bit and see how we're doing. Looks good so far. I did catch the bone just a little bit, but looks like we're good otherwise. So I'm going to continue in through that same cut, staying that side of the bone and continuing through. And as I come down here, I'm just staying along the bones in the neck, or in the collar, I should say, and continuing through. And now you can see we've got a good amount of space, and you can see we're getting close to the rib cage here. So this is when I'm going to want to come out a little bit. And again, I'm just following the map that Mother Nature drew And now the bone is all but free. It's just being held on, or the breast, sorry, is all but free. It's just being held on right here. And that's keeping the wing. So we're just going to slice through that. And then this should free it up, except for the tendon. We're just coming across, again, right along the rib cage. And then I'm going to set my knife aside to show you. As we look here, you can see the wing joint right here, and that's what we want to separate off with the breast. And so what I like to do for that is kind of pull the wing and breast aside, and then with my knife just come in through that joint. Right around, a few small cuts in and underneath. Yep. So this is, we'll set this aside for a moment, the breast with the full wing. If we take off the entire wing, like so, this chicken breast, without the skin, this is the most sold piece of meat in America. Boneless, skinless chicken breasts. They're all right. So we'll set that aside. To take apart the wing, you've got the drumette, the flat, and the tip. The tip is good for stock, but not much else. And our knife will go right through the cartilage. For the separating the flat from the drum, I like to bend it back, which exposes the joint right here, which you can feel. And then I make a small cut very carefully. Here. So this is one bone, and this is the bone, the part we're trying to cut off. Drummy, flat. The other way you can take the wing off is starting from here, and you can, let me move this over. You can wingtip straight through the cartilage, and then to find the joint from here, you go through and fold it back, and then go through again. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. This leaves the drumette attached to the breast, which leaves something that we call an airline breast. To take the breast off again, we'll find the breastbone, and we'll come just to the side of it, run our knife gently along it as we come down. And this time we want the wing to come with, so we'll come inside again, find the wing joint. And then another way you can do it that I happen to like, but is a little more risky, is I'll just come in. It's tough to do this for camera. So I'll lift it. Hang on. So if I lift it, you can come in under the bottom of the breast and get the skin out there. And then here you just come in and hold this as a bundle from underneath. Again, it's a little less safe. You kind of need to know where your knife is headed. We'll set this aside for a moment. So this is an airline breast, so named because it's a breast that can fly, theoretically. All right, so with the breasts done, let's talk about the dark meat. So, dark meat, legs, thighs. Personal opinion, I like dark meat better. Right here, in the chicken badonkadonk, as one of my colleagues used to say, are the tastiest little part of the chicken. They're called oysters, and it's important that when you take the thighs off, you not miss them. One of the ways I like to do that is, before I take these off, I'll make a shallow cut through the skin between the two oysters, and then a shallow cut just above the two oysters. Again, it's a little tough to do for camera. So now, to get the thigh off, I'm going to fold it over so that I can see the bone right here. And then I'm going to come in from here, being careful to meet this cut, and come under the oyster. So we're going in, and then with the tip of our knife, you can even take your thumb and feel, and kind of slide your thumb in between the bone and the meat, and that will free it up so that it comes out easy. And so we're through the skin. And then this is the oyster. I'll show it to you better in a moment. We're going to come in under it with the tip of our knife through the skin, under this bone, and that cuts the leg and the thigh free. Once more on this side, fold it back. It starts to get a little unstable now, so you got to be careful. You can do all of this from here if you want. It's just a little bit tougher to get the oyster. So if I come in, I can feel the oyster. I can kind of push it free. And then cut the skin, cut in around here, and then I can cut this sooner, and then just come through the same exact way. Ta-da! And so that oyster, let me show you. The oyster is this teensy little chunk that's got a little bit of goo on it. This teensy little chunk is the tastiest little bit of chicken on the bird. And that just leaves our carcass. So let's hop back to the wide shot, and we'll talk about the parts and what we can do with them. All right, I've donned a fresh pair of gloves. I've washed my cutting board and then kept the raw chicken off of it. So let's talk parts. Some of this stuff is just going straight into the pot. The wingtips, stock. Giblets, stock. This carcass, the little bits of meat that are still on it, into the pot. And the neck, of course. These are the wings and the flats and the flats and drummies of the wings. I think we all know what to do with chicken wings, right? Right? 3 of them isn't enough for even a snack, so I'm going to put these in the pot. They'll add some nice flavor and collagen. I'm going to have some of this for dinner tonight, but most of it I'm going to pack up, and we'll talk about how I packaged them on the episodes where we use those parts. For now, let's get into the stock. For the stock, we've got the chicken in there already. We're going to add the vegetables and then cover it with water and get it on the stove. For vegetables, I've got a few parsley stems, some garlic. This is what, 2, 4, 6, 8 cubes, or 8 cloves. And then I've got a carrot that I already peeled and some celery. And I was going to say medium, but this qualifies as a large white onion. These 3 vegetables together in the ratio of 1 part carrot, 1 part celery, and 2 part onions is known as mirepoix. M-I-R-E-P-O-I-X. Mirepoix. It is the basis for all traditional French stocks and soups and that sort of thing. So let's break this down. It's really easy to break down veggies for stock. Don't want these parts. Don't want this part. This can all just go in the pot. And then the onion, we'll take the stem off, cut it into quarters, cut the root out of each quarter, and then everything but the peel right in. It's a lot easier to move a pot and then put water in it, so I will do it that... Whoops. Peels out, onions in. Anyway, it's a lot easier to move the pot before I put the water into it, so I'm going to get the pot on the stove and then bring the water over. See you in a sec. Here we are at the stove. I've got everything in the pot, and I'm going to add enough filtered water to cover. If your tap water tastes good, just use tap water. My tap water doesn't taste good, so I'm using filtered. And now I'm going to turn the stove on. And I'm going to put this over like medium heat. I want it to come up slowly. We don't want it to sit and be raw chicken at like a dangerous temperature. But I don't want to bring it up to a boil very fast. I want to give it time to slowly come up. And that will help purge out some of the kind of impurities and proteins and things that we don't want to have in our final stock. So we're going to chill on this and let it go until it comes to a boil, and we'll be back to look at it then. Our stock is nearly at a boil. You can see that the bubbles are just kind of starting. So you also see these little bits of white stuff. Most of that is just protein that's coagulating out of the liquid. We don't want it in our stock. It'll make it cloudy and not really add anything to it. So we're going to skim that off as best we can. And it's important not to skip the step of skimming, Because how well you skim your stock is it has a very big effect on the end product. Okay, I'm just saying that because that's what they taught us in culinary school. It definitely has an effect, and it's important to tend to your stock as it's cooking. But you don't need to spend the whole 2 hours that this is going to cook hovering over it. So, I'm going to do a little more skimming for now, and then we'll check back in a little bit. We are just barely below a boil, and we've got a little bit of scum on the surface. I already got a fair amount of it off, so I'm just going to skim off this last part and turn this down so that it's at a bare simmer. And a bare simmer is a few little bubbles, but only every couple of seconds. So this is too hot. There we go. We'll turn that down and we'll let it go. And this will slow down. The bubbles will slow down in a sec. And we're going to let this go for about 2 hours, skimming it every once in a while and topping it up to keep everything submerged as needed. I'd say check on it every 15-20 minutes just to make sure that it's not doing anything weird. It's been about 2 hours. I've taken our stock off of the stove, and now it's time to strain it. I've got a glass bowl here so you can see what it looks like with a strainer in it, and then this is just a bowl for the waste. The first thing I'm going to do is scoop out the big chunks. Try to save as much of the liquid as possible, of course. That should be good. Let's go ahead and pour it in. And there we have it. So this is perfectly serviceable chicken stock. You can see it's a little light. It's because we only let it go for about 2 hours because we only had one chicken worth of bones in there. More chicken, you can let it go longer. At restaurants I've worked at, we've routinely let it go overnight or even 24 hours. But for home use, I'd say let it go a couple hours. And then if you want a more concentrated and smaller amount, you can reduce it down. I'll show some video of that process as we go. And reducing it down, as I said, it concentrates the flavor. It makes it so that you have less of it to store. And generally what I do is I reduce this down by about half and then store it in either mason jars or Tupperware, some kind of airtight container. In an airtight container, it'll last in the fridge for about a month. And it can freeze for a year easy. Again, airtight container. You can put it in ice cube trays and have just a little bit, enough for sauce or something like that. It's incredibly versatile, and you can use it as a building block for an almost unlimited amount of culinary tasks. Well then, it's been a few hours. I've got my stock reduced. I've got a mason jar, my trusty canning funnel, and a very fine strainer. Let's go ahead and strain this one last time and get it ready for storage. You want to make sure you don't like push anything through, just kind of let it drip, and you'll get the most of the rest of the gunk off. Alright, so we ended up with about a little more than the pint, which is pretty good. I'm happy with that. It looks beautiful. Excuse me. So I'm going to leave this out to cool down to room temperature, and then I'll pop it in the fridge. But until next time, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your time zone. And if you get a minute, go ahead and check me out on Twitter @WashinTheWind, on Instagram @WashinTheWind, but without the E. I also have a Patreon. I have a Twitch channel. You can find links to those at the social medias or down in the description. Again, as usual, I hope you'll try this out and let me know how it goes.